The Dolans may not be household names around the world, but here in New York, they are sports and media royalty. With me to discuss the Dolan family, native New Yorker Gary Silverman. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you.
So the Dolans, most notably in New York, they have many media properties, but most notably are the New York Knicks. Tell us the cultural relevance of the New York Knicks here.
Yeah, the relevance of the Knicks is, the Dolans have the misfortune of owning the New York Knicks. In the sense, no team is more important to New Yorkers than the Knicks, I would argue. And this is the reason, is New York is almost the ultimate basketball town. Basketball is the ultimate city game. We consider ourselves to be the ultimate city. And during the late 60s and early 70s, the New York Knicks achieved a cultural significance around here, really without parallel, because they played the most beautiful basketball maybe ever played.
And they were very good too, so tell us about how they performed.
Well, they were the champions. They lost in the semifinals in '69.
Yeah.
They won in '70. They lost in the semifinals in '71, lost in the finals in '72, and they won the championship in '73.
And so the
they
players
were
were
glorious.
Walt Frazier,
Glorious.
Bill Bradley.
Bill Bradley. It was a combination. They basically won by being a smarter team than the other teams. They played a more elegant game. I think for a global audience, it would almost be like Brazilian soccer,
yeah,
or some of the more beautiful teams that Barcelona has fielded in European football in recent years, where they just embodied what we thought of ourselves.
And so we fast forward, they have a very complicated corporate history. But what happened in the 90s, the Dolan family, who are best known as the founders of Cablevision, which is the Long Island cable company, jointly bought the Knicks along with ITT, a very famous corporation, and then ultimately the Dolans took full control of the Knicks. And so in New York now, we think of the Dolans as presiding over the Knicks for the last 20 years, and they've been a historically bad franchise.
And they're terrible, and it hurts our self-image, because New Yorkers think that we live in the capital of basketball, and we know the most about basketball of any city in the world. Madison Square Garden calls itself the Mecca of basketball. It calls itself the world's most famous arena.
Yeah.
We believe that we are the embodiment of basketball culture here. We're to basketball what Impressionism is to Paris or something, or Paris is to Impressionism.
So it stings and it hurts as New Yorkers to have a basketball team.
And they're terrible. They've been terrible for years.
Yeah, and they're a joke.
It's
and
embarrassing.
So
and
bring
hurts.
this back to Cablevision and the Dolans. They have this incredible media empire of assets, which includes the Knicks, Madison Square Garden, which is this amazing venue in the middle of Manhattan, along with this cable company, Cablevision. And so they've done some very interesting things in the last few years. They spun off the Garden and the Knicks into its own company. They spun off their TV network business, AMC, which is now known for having Mad Men and other famous shows. And that leaves 3 companies in the Dolan empire. And so one possible scenario is that they sell these other ancillary businesses, and they could be left with what Jimmy Dolan, who is the son of the founder of the company who runs the Knicks, he would be running the Knicks full time. And so that is something that probably frightens most Nick.
Well, there isn't a lot of confidence there. Although earlier this year, they hired Phil Jackson, the most successful basketball coach of all time, and a product of the Knicks championship teams, to run their basketball operations. So there is a little credibility there, though I think for Knicks fans generally, the jury is out on whether this arrangement will work and whether the Dolans will permit the team to be run in the fashion it would need to be run and to be a successful team.
Well, the interesting thing with pro sports is that you don't necessarily have to have a good team to be worth a lot. The Clippers sold for $2 billion. The Knicks could be worth, by that standard, $3 billion, $4 billion.
We are a captive audience here.
And Jimmy Dolan loves being around basketball players, loves the attention that goes with owning this great franchise, and so there's not a lot of incentive for him necessarily to sell it, even with those values. Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome.